Uz Report world viewers, welcome to our studio, and we have an exclusive guest today, Mr. Akmal Muratov, the Anti-Corruption Agency of Uzbekistan. Mr. Akmal, welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting.
You're welcome, and we're glad to see you here. I have several questions, if you don't mind. Mr. Muratov, my first question is about corruption. What is corruption in general, and how we can differentiate corruption?
Actually, corruption is a form of dishonesty or abuse of power, which is undertaken by a person, or in some countries by an organization, with entrusted of official position in order to acquire illegal benefit or to abuse power for one's private gain. Corruption may include giving or accepting bribes, under-the-table transactions, double dealing, manipulating elections, or other forms of power abusing. But the main distinguishing feature of corruption is always that it is always accompanied by abusing the power.
Okay, thank you so much. Which forms of corruption do we have, and whether it is possible to level the corruption rate, according to your opinion?
According to statistics and analysis, corruption may occur at all different levels of government: global, national, local, provincial. Unfortunately, despite of preventive measures and the strict laws, corruption are met in our society in social sphere, in political sphere, law enforcement, or civil service. Regarding leveling the corruption, unfortunately, it's a relative question because, for example, there are many rating agencies in the world which rank countries on corruption cases. Due to undisclosed facts and cases regarding corruption offenses. And it should be mentioned that the Anti-Corruption Agency of Uzbekistan nowadays developing a national corruption perception index, which will show corruption at local and the state levels, at the same time in the section of spheres.
Okay, very good. There is a corruption perceptions index, shortly CPI, which is an index published annually by Transparency International since 1995, which ranks countries by their perceived levels of public sector corruption as determined by expert assessments and opinion surveys. What is your opinion upon this establishment and index generally?
Transparency International is a global movement which works in more than 100 countries, and it's aimed at ending injustice of corruption by promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity. Regarding corruption perception index, undoubtedly it's the most famous index in this sort, but the feature is CPI is aimed to demonstrate how people accept the corruption. It measures on people's thinking about corruption, but it doesn't present the accurate, real facts on corruption in the states. In other words, CPI is index of indices. It is composed of several indexes, several sources that all provide different rankings for countries. And these all indices are aimed at raising awareness, enabling countries to understand and better confront the problem, and encourage governments in their anti-corruption efforts.
Could you please point out the most common types or categories of corruption, and which categories are the most common for Central Asia and post-Soviet Union countries?
Corruption may be categorized or divided into types in different ways. For example, grant or petty corruptions, conventional or unconventional corruptions, supply or demand corruption. In other words, corruption might be systematic or isolated or individual. But regarding common types of corruption in CA countries, according to reports of international organizations and the research of scholars, it might be drawn that the common types of corruption in CA countries are bribery, embezzlement, and abuse of power.
Okay. As for information, South Sudan is also perceived as one of the most corrupted countries in the world due to constant social and economic crises, ranking an average score of 13 out of 100 in 2018. Denmark is the least corrupt country in the world, according to Transparency International's study of corruption perception worldwide. For instance, corruption in Thailand is a national issue. As you know, Transparency International's 2018 Corruption Perception Index ranks the country 99th place out of 180 countries. The index examines public sector corruption. What is your opinion about Central Asian countries?
Actually, corruption exists everywhere, and the Central Asia countries are not exception. But according to reports of international organizations, one can think that CA region is one of the worst region in the world when it comes to corruption. But corruption is always was perennial topic for Central Asia, and the current situation with economic crisis and other situations in our social life bring the topic of corruption to the fore. That's why, from the point of view of corruption, citizens really think that it's a good way to simplify their social problems, and the people accept it. And the main duty of our government, our anti-corruption bodies, is to raise the legal awareness and the legal understanding of corruption by the people.
Well, thank you so much. And what is organizational impact of corruption, and what kind of detection mechanisms are available?
Organizational impacts of corruption are financial loss to population, damaging the people's moral and damaging state's reputation, diverting funds of the country in spite of directing these funds to needed spheres. At the same time, diverting taxpayers' funds. Regarding detecting mechanisms of corruption, the common ways of detecting are audits and reporting. Audits might be internal or external, or regarding reporting, it might be reporting by citizens, mass media, self-reporting or whistleblowers. And the governments should encourage using modern technologies in order to detect corruption cases. For example, blockchain technologies, mobile applications, or web platforms. Another ways of detecting corruption is declaring assets and the income of public officials, or investigations carried out by authorized bodies.
Okay. Generally, corruption is like a virus, and many countries accept as a social problem due to the following reasons. Corruption slows down the development activities, as you mentioned. It discourages the spirit of skilled and honest citizen. Corruption affects the fair distribution of resources and opportunities negatively. According to your opinion, what should the government undertake to slow it down and change the mentality of the people?
First of all, governments and the people should understand that corruption is not only bribes. There are many complex types of corruption. That's why only after understanding all types of corruption, or government and the people together can create a strategy to fight this problem. Then government should encourage and create a pathway for people to be involved at the same time NGOs to be involved in anti-corruption system of the state. Next, government should use modern technologies widely in their activities to detect and to fight this problem. At the same time, United Nations Convention Against Corruption encourages international relations, international support in the matter of fighting corruption, particularly UNCAC encourages sharing best practices and helping other states to use modern technologies in their activities.
Transparency International has published its latest report on Corruption Perception Index 2019. According to the report, the Republic of Uzbekistan improved its score to 25 points, rising by 5 positions and taking 153rd place. Georgia 56 points, Belarus 45 points, and Montenegro 45 points have taken the highest positions in the list of countries of Eastern Europe, with a level above the world average. Meantime, the countries of Central Asia, Turkmenistan has acquired 19 points, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan 25 points each. With this positive index, what is your forecast for 2021? Whether Uzbekistan will improve its positions further? What do you think?
As I mentioned before, the CPI is developed on the perception of corruption by people. That's why, taking into consideration that in Uzbekistan based on political will and willings of our people, we are taking great anti-corruption efforts and reforms. I hope that world community will positively evaluate our anti-corruption reforms. It should be mentioned that in November, our director of the Anti-Corruption Agency of Uzbekistan took part in an international conference organized by Korean Anti-Corruption and the Civil Rights Commission together with Transparency International, where our director, Mr. Burkhanov, announced anti-corruption reforms and our plans in this sphere. And in this session of the conference, the chairman of the Transparency International also was participating. In this regard, we hope that our efforts will be positively evaluated by world community in the next near future.
Okay. Mr. Muratov, in conclusion, could you please once again outline one by one what exactly should be done in order to eliminate the corruption in Uzbekistan?
Government, anti-corruption bodies should systematize our works and our efforts in this sphere. Nowadays, for example, we're developing a national anti-corruption strategy of Uzbekistan. Then we should greatly involve and widely encourage participating people and NGOs in anti-corruption efforts of our state. We should develop further best strategies of protecting whistleblowers. At the same time, anti-corruption education and raising legal awareness of people is very needed in order to succeed in anti-corruption efforts. And that is what are we going to do in near future.
Okay, very good and very positive. Thank you so much, Mr. Muratov, for coming to our studio. It was our pleasure.
Thank you very much once more for inviting.
You're welcome. Hope to see you again, and we wish you success for your anti-corruption agency and for all your effort doing in Uzbekistan.
Thank you very much. I also wish you further success and stay safe. Thank you very much.
So, dear Uz Report world viewers, we had a special guest today, Mr. Muratov Akmal, the Anti-Corruption Agency of Uzbekistan. Stay safe and goodbye.